Recommendation that the agenda for the special regular council meeting of December 14th, 2016 be adopted as presented. Moved by Councillor Kinney, second by Councillor Niche. All those in favor? It's carried. Okay, moving on to the bylaws. Our recommendation. I'll move the recommendation on the floor. Any seconders? Seconded by Councillor Niche. Okay, further discussion on this matter? Councillor Moreau.
Thanks, Mr. Mayor. I apologize for being absent from the Monday meeting. So I know you guys had most of this debate. I just had one question for staff related mostly to the fees relating to connections and inspections and things like that. I'm wondering, in some cases there was listed that the fee was just the actual cost that the city can charge the cost of doing business. Is that the same for, or have all of those rates been pegged to what it actually costs the city, or are we losing money on some of those fees and connections and things like that?
Currently, in many cases, we're losing money, and it's being subsidized by the general fee ratepayer pool. So we're trying to correct that and make it fairer. And it is only the actual cost to the city that would be requested back as the fee.
The reason I ask is because I know it would be a shock to the system for a lot of ratepayers if we were to just charge actual costs across the board. But I think if we're moving in that general direction, then I have the confidence that we know that we've inherited infrastructure that's decades past its best before date. But that's another, I think, creative way that it's not just simply raising rates, but looking at the fees that we charge so that it actually reflects the cost of connecting people to water and sewer and things like that. Because I don't want to see taxpayers having to subsidize new development or to subsidize the cost of new connections we're already paying some of the highest rates in the province. So I think if people are trying to get online and want to get new connections and things like that, we don't want existing ratepayers to be subsidizing that. So as long as we're moving in that direction of charging what it actually costs us, then I'm happy.
Other comments? Councillor Manawa.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor. I still believe that this increase will be huge for our community, especially when we already increase bus fares and recreation fees from 5% and to 15% depends, and another increase, right? So I think especially when our cannery was not working, lots of people didn't get their EIs. So I think this will be huge fees for our community, and lots of people probably can have hard time to pay this year.
Other comments? Okay, hearing none. Oh, what?
Yeah, I have I have a bit of a problem because of and I spent some time with Ms. Bombin today talking about what we are attempting to do here, and it looks to me like that the funds are basically providing a surplus towards capital input. So that's in the document that was given out before the we're looking at the total income for one of the utilities might be $2.8 million, right? And then what we're looking at is approximately $2.2 million put into routine matters. So that would be routinely inspecting things, routinely reading meters, or just doing routine operations and routine maintenance. So each one of these funds has some money left over, and that's what we're banking on for capital investment. So the capital investment might be opening up a new cell, or putting in a pipeline or redoing a dam or putting in more sewer pump stations or something, but not maintenance. It's what our capital is. So we might bring in $2.8 million a year. We spent 2.2, and so that's leaving us $600,000 to put into capital repairs. So that means that's capital repairs, not necessarily capital stuff, not necessarily being maintenance, although in our case it is maintenance. It's a pipe breaks, we got to fix it. That comes out of that capital that we have put aside, that part of the budget, which is the capital part of the budget. Now every year, except for in the landfill, we've been running a surplus, and so there's an accumulated surplus in each one of these categories. But what Ms. Bauman is pointing out to me is that the accumulated surplus, even though we've been accumulating surplus in every one of these categories over the years, we still don't have enough to do any one major project. That, you know, if we have a major pipe break or to redo something that we want to plan to redo, such as the pipeline underneath the submarine pipeline from our water for our water supply, or refurbish or redoing the dam, those things we will not be able to have enough of a surplus in our budget as it is now to do any of those projects. So even the cumulative surplus that we have left in each one of those funds is not enough to do any of the major projects. So if we put in, we have a 5% increase every year, then what happens is that we are going to take 2% of that increase, and instead of having that now as a bigger surplus, we are actually putting 2% of that increase into a dedicated reserve surplus. And that's why I said that I think that we should have some discussion on what we want that surplus, how we want that surplus to be accessed. Whether it has to be by special resolution, Ms. Bauman was suggesting it, or maybe it was Mr. Long was suggesting that it's not, so staff can't just go into it and budget into the next budget. It actually has to be dealt with in a special resolution. But I think that asset management fund, if we're going to create one, that's going to be more than, right now we do have a surplus in every one of those funds. In solid waste, we have a very small surplus. But what we do have is a surplus. But that surplus is not enough, is not going to get us anywhere near repairing the infrastructure in any major way. So if we're going to set up an asset management that's supposed to be accumulating surplus to be put into future grand projects that we know is going to cost millions and millions and millions of dollars, that we're going to have to apply to the provincial government for a grant, to the federal government for a grant to help us along with those projects, then we need to have a chunk there. So if we're going to put that money aside into the asset management, then we are still going to have a surplus in our regular utility accounts based on how much work we do in every 1 year. If we don't buy a new truck, then we might end up with a surplus. If we are lucky enough that extra pipe didn't break, then we might end up with a surplus in our regular accounts. But we can't count on a surplus in those regular accounts. This is a conclusion I've come to. We can't count on a surplus in those regular accounts because those regular accounts are beset by general capital needs that we have every year. And like I say, some of those capital needs we could put off, like if we need a new car or a new truck, well, maybe we can have the old one limp around town for an extra year. But sooner or later, that's going to catch up to you. And so we need to have a regular surplus to look after regular capital things that we do year after year. Pave so much road, put in so many sidewalks, things that we're scheduling as part of our regular maintenance program, and then we need a separate surplus that we're putting in a separate fund that we can only access by separate resolution. Now, if that's what we're doing here, then I would support it, because I don't see any other way that we're going to accomplish having enough money in the bank to do major projects where our funding is, where we have to have matching funding, or a third of the funding, which I've never seen any of the projects where we haven't had to have some kind of matching funding. So that's why I would support the 2% into an asset management fund, because I think that 2% is going to go into a fund where we're going to be able to not just be fixing things that are falling apart now, but going to, in a proactive approach, and fixing infrastructure that, in a big way, that we know needs large, we need to impact it in a large way, meaning our money plus government money. So I'm easy with it, as long as we come up with a set of resolutions that we are going to attach to that asset management, so that we have a set of rules on how, so it doesn't become just another roll-in for annual maintenance, that it becomes a special fund that we can access. I mean, if Third Avenue all of a sudden spouted 25,000 leaks and we're going to have to fix it, maybe we'd be able to get into that special fund if that's what we thought we needed to do. But I thought about, because I think that's a honking, with Councillor Randhawa here, I think that's a huge honking big increase to lay on people in this, and it's a flat tax. It's not a tax based on ability to pay. It's not a flat tax based on how much your house is valued. This is a flat tax. It's taxed on the poor, fixed income, and the wealthy at the same time. And I really don't like flat taxes, but I think that that we need to have a system of finding the ability to put money away, and if we only have $500,000 a year in each of those other accounts that we have to spend on regular maintenance, we will never accumulate enough to do special projects that we need to do, forward-looking projects that we need to do.
So part of the last resolution was so that in the next, because the urgency of how we're going to spend is not necessarily here today, but that will, in the next 2 months, 3 months, come to have some sort of guidelines around how we want the reserve accounts to look. So that was part of the last resolution for the councillors that weren't here. And I agree with that. Anything further?
Last council meeting we discussed cleaning up some of these clauses in here, and I'd like to see us do that, like that 22.51 about the reconnection charge, compulsory connection charge, and things like that. And I would really like to see council sit down and start going over some of these archaic bylaws or clauses in these bylaws that have been there for a long time and can be misused if so they were so chosen to be.
One way you can look at it would be misused. Other way would be protecting the city also. So, I mean, I don't think that when 9th Avenue is done, they went and charged anybody for anything, reconnection fees. So I think that it's there to protect the city, so that if somebody, doesn't want to participate with what we have as far as water and sewer and storm connections, then we have the ability to do something about it. If our hands are tied because we don't have a bylaw saying that we can do that, then who's going to pay for it? So I think it's best to leave it up to the staff to keep the bylaws the way they were, and it's the way it's been for years and years and years. And I don't want to handcuff them into getting into a position where we all of a sudden can't collect any money. I'm pretty sure that if somebody was having a really bad issue with a connection fee, they would probably complain to administration, which would then come to us anyways. So I think if there was a certain circumstance or issue, we could probably take care of it.
Okay, anything further?
I mean, I think if the purpose of this, I understand the purpose of this meeting is to get this passed so that we can have a budget and staff can be working on, and we need to pass this because it's for for next year, right? So we have to pass it before December 31st. Is that correct? So I think that we don't have enough time to go through this, but I would be willing to make a motion after we pass this, or after we deal with this one way or the other, that a subcommittee of interested council members can sit down and have a look at which sections they're concerned with, and bring it forward to a council meeting so that we can all have a discussion over those sections and perhaps amend them. So, I thought I was kind of looking at those extra fees and wondering about them as well, and I'm sure there's some reason, but Mr. Long was unable to supply us with a reason, and it's not good enough, I think, Councillor Niche, to say that we're going to charge some people and not others, right? And so we need to, I agree, we need to have some teeth. Don't disagree with what you said there, but I also disagree with some people get charged and some people don't get charged, because it starts giving city workers discretionary power, and I don't believe that city workers should have discretionary power over that kind of thing. So I think council can, maybe, but certainly not staff. So anyway, I would be prepared, if that makes Councillor Cunningham feel a bit better, that maybe there's nothing in here, maybe everything is hunky-dory, but I don't really feel capable of going through these bylaws and without a lot of explanation and wasting of staff's time to explain what they're about, but other people in council may have a better understanding of much of how this works anyway. So I'd be prepared to make that motion if that made Councillor Cunningham feel better about this bylaw.
Okay, well, why don't we take care of the motion on the floor then? Anything else? Okay, all those in favor? Any opposed? Motion's carried. And I will entertain this motion at this time.
I move that we set up a small subcommittee to go over the bylaws and fees, and bring back a report to council after working with staff on why they're in there, and bring back a report to council with any recommended changes.
Any interested councillors? Okay, cool. Okay.
Yeah. So I thought maybe Councillor Cunningham and Niche might want to sit on there.
I'd just like to get the committee actually formed this time. So we'll say the three councillors there. Okay.
Not me.
Blair.
Oh, Blair.
Oh, you don't want to be on that?
Blair. No, I don't want to be on that. Do you want to be on that?
You do want to be on that? Okay, and Gurvinder? Okay. So we'll have Councillor Ranhawa, Councillor Moreau, Councillor Cunningham, and Councillor Niche. Okay, so seconder then? Okay, so seconded by Councillor Cunningham. The committee, any further discussion?
I just want to be clear in this committee, we're not talking about altering the bylaws that we just passed. We're talking about cleaning this up for the following year.
Yeah, eventually.
Yeah.
Eventually, there's lots of bylaws, like last election you were talking about banging pots and things like that. You said a lot of bylaws had to be cleaned up, so maybe we can look at a broad spectrum of them, and somebody from staff can explain why they're there, and if there's a good explanation, we leave them there. If not, then some of them are archaic, some aren't. Some, like Councillor Niche just said, there's some reasons for them, so it's just a matter of making sure the public is protected, and at the same time the city's protected.
Okay. Anything else? All those in favor? Any opposed? Motion's carried. Okay, that's our last meeting of the year. So I'd entertain a motion to adjourn. Moved by Councillor Cunningham, second by Councillor Niche. All those in favor? Meeting is adjourned. Merry Christmas.